how your ego tames the wild forces of your mind. Psychologists have been studying this for over a century, starting with Freud's ideas about the id and the ego. You might be familiar with those terms. Freud described the id as the source of raw psychic energy, restless, uninhibited, and always pushing upward into awareness. And the ego as the organizer, harnessing that energy so you can live and function in the real world. So now neuroscience has added a new layer to this picture, this discussion of ego and the id. Research on the brain's default mode network shows how this balance between chaos and order plays out in the wiring of our brain. So understanding it can give you practical tools to manage your emotions, sharpen your focus, and guide personal growth. So let's start by talking about the two big players here, the ego and the id. And these are the main forces shaping your inner experience. Now, Freud described the id as the reservoir of instinctive energy, imagination, desire, emotional surges, and that operates mostly outside of your conscious awareness. And the id, otherwise known as a primary process, the thinking is raw, free-flowing, and often illogical. You witness it in dreams, flashes of creative inspiration, and moments when feelings outweigh reason. Now, these impulses don't care about rules or reality. They simply push upward, seeking expression. So balancing this, the drives, urges, and impulses of the id, balancing it is the ego, your mind's internal organizer and regulator. Now, I've had some videos involving the ego, and they say that the ego is also built up of a collection of these drives, right? They just happen to be in control. So the ego's job is to convert the id's chaotic energy into ordered thought and deliberate action using the secondary process is what it's called. So this means focusing attention, planning, managing impulses, and keeping your mental life grounded in reality. Look, the ego does a lot of good things. I mean, it's amazing how crucial the ego is for our functioning and our life. But if you listen to anyone online, I mean, they're just talking about it as if it's something you have to get rid of. Even spiritual leaders, I'm just shocked. These people that have millions of followers are talking about it as if it's something you have to get rid of, where I don't see how you could even survive without it. So again, the ego doesn't simply suppress the id, but it negotiates and channels its energy in ways that help you thrive in complex situations. So modern neuroscience connects these classic ideas to specific brain systems. The default mode network, it's a set of interconnected regions like medial, prefrontal, and posterior cingulate cortex. This is the only time I'm going to mention brain regions, so don't worry about it. The DMN is crucial for self-reflection, autobiographical memory, and organizing internal narratives. So the DMN is most active during rest. Look, we're talking about the DMN because you fast forward 100 years from when they were first talking about the ego till now. Now they've mapped it into specific regions of the brain, and the DMN is one of them. So it's most active during rest. Really pay attention to this. It's very interesting. Daydreaming and periods where you turn inward, allowing your mind to weave together the past, the present, and future. So when you switch to external, goal-oriented activity, on the other hand, the DMN activity drops and attention networks take command, right? So you're doing some goal-oriented external activity, the DMN activity drops, and your attention networks take command, showing how the ego balances inner reflection with outward engagement, right? So conversely, if you're resting, the DMN activity is heightened. So as you develop, as we grow, mature, DMN connectivity matures, mirroring the growth of ego functions, better emotion regulation, resilience, and adaptability. So this neural partnership is what allows your mind to expertly manage energy, moving between chaos and order, and ultimately supporting your well-being. So sitting at the top of this predictive hierarchy, right? The predictive brain, I have a number of videos about that. Sitting on top is the default mode network, what we've been talking about just now. It uses your personal history, your beliefs, and stored experiences to build models of the world, and then sends those best guesses down to other brain regions. So when those predictions line up with reality, we're talking about your predictive brain. The brain is this predictive type of system. So the default mode network, using these experiences, personal history, and beliefs, sends those best guesses down to other brain regions. And then when those predictions line up with reality, your mental energy stays bounded. It's bound. In other words, it's organized, it's stable, and it's under the ego's control, your mental energy. And you feel grounded, focused, and balanced. But when the DMN regulation slips, because you have disrupted sleep or strong emotions or you're in an altered state, the prediction errors rise, right? Which means that your brains, your DMN, egos, your guesses of what's happening around you in the world is not very accurate. So the ego's organizing influence under these circumstances weakens and mental energy becomes free. And that's what your brain is trying to minimize. But in these cases, these circumstances, the mental energy becomes free, unstructured, intense, unpredictable. So that's when the primary process thinking steps in. Remember, we said the id, synonymous with primary process, driving chaotic ideas, heightened emotions, and loose associations. Now we see the match between Freud's work over 100 years ago and the neuroscientific picture today. Freud described the ego as binding free-flowing energy into stable reality-based thought. The ego wants to bind this energy, to get it under control, right? This chaotic, unstructured energy from your drives, the id, and that's the primary process. So neuroscience shows that the DMN doing the same job, minimizing prediction errors to reduce surprise and keep the mind coherent. So the DMN is doing the same job here. Minimizing prediction errors, that means being more accurate about its guesses of what's happening in reality, in the world, and reducing surprise. So let me share a few real-life examples or phenomena with you, okay? So you can see this working in action. So you can actually watch these energy wars play out in some of the most familiar and surprising moments in life. Like take REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. This is when your brain's default mode network loosens its control over limbic regions, which is emotional regions. So this reduced regulation is exactly why dreams can feel so vivid, irrational, and deeply emotional, right? Because the DMN network loosens its control. So you get dreams that are vivid, irrational, deeply emotional. Because brain recordings during REM confirm this. The DMN's orderly communication patterns relax, while bursts of rhythmic activity in emotional and memory processing areas take over. So in dream logic, your ego's grip is soft and the id's primary process runs free. Now you understand why we have dreams, why the dreams are the way they are. It's no longer something unknown and black box. There is a reason for that. So the ego's grip is soft and the id's primary process runs free. I can't get over this. All these spiritual leaders and gurus online saying how you have to get rid of this ego and stuff. Absolute rubbish, absolute nonsense. You cannot survive without it. So this so-called ego dissolution, heightened sensory richness, and a rush of novel associations. So they're just trying to simulate what would happen if you were taking LSD or psilocybin, large amounts. So people often describe it as their thoughts flowing without the usual filters, which is exactly what you'd expect when primary process thinking takes the lead. That's the id, that's the drives, unstructured, uncontrolled, right? So even without dreaming or psychedelics, you felt smaller versions of this before. Think of moments when sudden anger, fear, or excitement pushes past your usual self-control. For those few seconds or minutes, the id's energy is ahead on the scoreboard, and your ego is scrambling to contain it. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have things like depression. Here, the energy isn't flooding consciousness. It's actually trapped in depression. The energy's trapped. Motivation drops, connection with the outside world fades, and the DMN's links to emotional regulation networks weaken. So this makes it harder to re-engage and reinforcing the feelings of being stuck. I don't know if you've ever felt stuck before or something similar to this. That's what it is. So across all these examples, you're seeing the same principle. Mental health and adaptability depend on the ego's ongoing ability to bind and channel psychic energy. You ever see a video talking about this rubbish about how you have to get rid of the ego or silence the ego or whatever? Oh, you know what to say. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. By the way, please like and subscribe. Take a moment. It really helps the channel and motivates me to keep making videos like this for you. And go through the description. I have links to reach out and connect with me and possible future resources. So let's talk about energy binding for a moment. Why it matters. Energy binding. Binding psychic energy is one of the ego's most important jobs. And it's easy to misunderstand what that really means. Freud was clear. Binding isn't about repressing or shutting down your impulses. It's about taking that raw energy from the id and actively shaping it into thought, speech, and action that works with the world that you live in. And when you bind energy, you integrate it into who you are and what you're doing, instead of letting it erupt chaotically or get buried where it will resurface unpredictably. So what can we take away from our talk today? When you feel your thoughts racing, your emotions spiking, or your focus slipping, that's your psychic energy on the move. And the ego's role isn't to crush these surges, it's to guide them, much like a conductor keeping an orchestra in sync. And when the ego binds energy effectively, the result is balance. Your emotions serve your goals rather than derail them. And you can strengthen this system. Practice like mindfulness practices, naming what you're feeling, or journaling. They're not just wellness tips. They literally train your brain's organizer networks, the DMN, ego, especially the DMN, to work more efficiently. Please take a second to like and subscribe to Henry's Millions. It motivates me to keep making these videos for you. Thanks.